well. Can you hear us on Zoom well, everyone? Give me a thumbs up.
Yep, okay.
Yes, okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you all for coming here and sitting with us today. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mayoral Debate Forum, presented by the Associated Students of Madison, BadgersVote, the campus area and the campus area neighborhood association. My name is Eli Sorofsky, he, him, his, from the campus area neighborhood association, and I'll be the timekeeper and in-person facilitator.
My name is Sarah Nels, I use she, her pronouns. I'm the vote coordinator for the Associated Students of Madison, your student government here on campus. And I will be moderating the Zoom and will be moderating some of the in-person questions as well.
Hi, I'm Kush Patel. I'm from Chup Vote. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the data director for Chup Vote.
And I'm Amanjot Kaur, she, her from BadgersVote. We are your campus resource for voting. We will be your moderators for tonight's candidate debate forum.
Awesome. And I would like you all to remind you all that this forum is both available in person and via Zoom. So that's we got our friends over here on the computer. And this will also have a recorded version of it. So if you miss anything tonight, it will be living online for you to watch again. And that will be made available on the CANA website and also the CANA YouTube page. So again, if you have any questions to ask our candidates, you'll be able to scan the QR code. Once you get to that, we'll have a computer just walk around and give it to you, honestly, when you get there. Sorry again for the technical difficulties. You all are awesome for sitting through that. You as well. Thank you so much. And yes, also when it comes to that Q&A function, you all have the ability to ask questions. So while you are watching this, if you have any questions pop in your mind, keep those in your mind and you might be able to ask them, right? And so joining us tonight are your candidates, incumbent Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway and former Deputy Mayor and former MMSD School Board President Gloria Reyes. A quick disclaimer before we begin, both of these campaigns have agreed to the rules of the forum beforehand. Your hosts have collaborated to create the format for this event. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer each question and will be granted 30 seconds to respond if they are mentioned in another candidate's response. They will answer each question in an alternate order. The questions have been chosen by Associated Students of Madison, BadgersVote, and the Campus Area Neighborhood Association. Again, if you have a question, please utilize the Q&A function on Zoom, all you on Zoom right there, or use the QR code that we placed at your table. Finally, if you have any questions about voting or getting involved with the Associated Students of Madison's BadgersVote, the Campus Area Neighborhood Association, please come and visit us at the moderator's table or message us via the chat function over Zoom for you all over Zoom. And we would be happy to help you. We got a big election ahead of us. Now with that, we will begin the forum. So first we'll start with our opening statements. Satya Rhodes Conway, you will start, and then Gloria will follow. You will have 3 minutes. You're ready.
All right. Let me make sure first, and I'll ask Sarah to help me that everybody on Zoom can hear me. Okay. Yes.
Can everybody hear? All right. Yep, okay.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good. Make sure all aspects of the technology are working here. And let me start by saying thank you to this amazing team and the tech folks that have put this all together. Clearly there's a lot going on, and I appreciate you making it possible for people to be here, not just in person, but also on Zoom to participate. And so hi to the folks on Zoom. Thanks for zooming in, and hi to the folks in the room. Thanks for being here. And thanks to all of you for caring enough about our city and our democracy to come and learn more about this campaign, but hopefully you also are tuned into all the other things that are going to be on the ballot on or before April 4th, because there's a lot of really important races. And you have an aldermanic race in the campus district, and you have the mayoral, there are multiple referenda questions, and then there's the all-important race for the state Supreme Court. And so hoping that you are all planning to vote in all of those races. And I just also want to shout out BadgersVote. If you have any questions about mechanics of voting, when, where, how, please connect with them. And they have been doing a great job on teaching students and encouraging folks to vote on campus. So thank you for your work on that. As they said, I'm Satya Rhodes Conway. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the mayor of Madison. I was elected 4 years ago on a platform of working on housing, climate change, transit, and racial equity. And I have been working on all of those priorities for the past 4 years. And because our community got hit by a global pandemic, we've also been working on public health, keeping folks safe during the pandemic, on public safety, on traffic safety, on investing in equitable economic development, and investing in young people in our community. I'm really proud of the work that we've done on a number of those issues. We've more than doubled the Affordable Housing Fund. We've approved over 15,000 units of housing in our community. We're working very hard. In fact, we were just talking earlier about student housing, and we're working hard to collaborate with campus around the issue of affordable student housing, and have actually developed a specific mechanism to create affordable student housing downtown, and looking forward to doing more with the chancellor and her team on that issue. And we're also really working on climate change. We have about 74% of the city's energy comes from renewable sources. We're on track to get to 100%. And we are electrifying our fleet. We have the first all-electric fire truck in North America out at Station 8. It's very exciting. It's called the Volterra. And we're purchasing another one. And that's just an example of the work that we're doing to make sure that we're reducing our greenhouse gas footprint at the city, but also working with the community to support people in reducing their own greenhouse gas footprints. I'm really passionate about city policy and getting good work done here in the city of Madison. I'm excited for another 4 years of doing good work for the city of Madison. And I will ask you, if you're interested in learning more about my campaign, to visit my website, satyaformadison.com. And I ask you to vote for me on or before April 4th. I'm proud to be endorsed by Congressman Mark Pocan, Planned Parenthood, and Wisconsin conservation voters.
Thank you so much. And then we'll move to Gloria Reyes.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It feels amazing to be back on campus as a Badger. I went to school here, so I just love the Memorial Union, so it feels like I'm back at home. You know, I'm Gloria Reyes, and I'm running to be your next mayor. I want to thank the host. I want to thank Canna, ASM, BadgersVote, and Chup Vote for all your support and just getting out the vote and really your civic engagement here today. I'm a longtime Madisonian. I grew up in Madison, and I'm running because I care about the residents of this city, and I care about you all, right? Oftentimes we forget our students, our residents of the city, and so I care about you all, and I'm concerned about our future. And you know, my parents came here from Mexico. They were migrant farm workers, so they traveled across the country, working hard labor in our fields. And I was born in Watoma, Wisconsin, of all places. My parents came here during the Cesar Chavez movement, where they were fighting for better wages and living conditions for hardworking families across the United States and right here in Wisconsin. And I remember my dad telling me the story about how they walked, when they were here protesting, they walked down State Street. They walked up Bascom Hill, and they talked about how education was going to be our way out of poverty. And so a couple of years later, they came back, and my dad became a welder. My mom became a nursing assistant. They were able to obtain sustainable jobs and raise a family here. And so I went, as I mentioned, I went to UW-Madison here, and you know, I went to East High School. And so, you know, after that, I wanted to become a law enforcement officer, because I remember growing up here in the northeast side of Madison, and officers would just come to our neighborhoods and make arrests and conduct search warrants. And my neighbors were all people of color. We had the Black community, Latino community was very diverse, and they would run from the police. And I wanted to be that change and build trust and relationships with our communities, particularly our communities of color who are most impacted by law enforcement. And then I was given the opportunity to work 5 years in the mayor's office as deputy mayor. And then, against all odds, the city of Madison voters elected me to serve on the Madison School Board. And so here I am. I am jumping in this race because I care about Madison. I'm concerned about the future of Madison. I want to focus on public safety, particularly public safety across the city. But I'm seeing trends right now on campus, and I think we really have to have targeted solutions and a community approach to solving crime in our city. Housing is such an issue. And so really want to work with you, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you today.
Awesome. Thank you both for your opening statements. Now we'll move on to our 4 topical questions before we get into the audience Q&A.
Can I have the mic or can I just?
You can speak.
I'll just speak loud. All right, so while UW-Madison is an important stakeholder in the city of Madison is more than just a college town. Can you explain how you will engage the various stakeholders in the city over the next 4 years and how you think the city ought to work with them to create a diverse community and vibrant city? For this question, Gloria, you will start.
Sure. As a public servant, my entire professional career, my leadership style is very, includes transparency, engagement with residents, with a focus on equity. And that is how I will lead as mayor. You know, I really want to take, we did a race to equity report years ago, really showcasing the racial disparities that exist in Dane County. And I really want to work and take that off the shelf, dust it off. We haven't touched it in a while. We do a lot of talking in the city about racial equity, but we don't do a lot to actually work through equity. And so I want to ensure that we take that off. We provide data-driven approaches to reducing the disparities around arrest, housing, economic justice, and all those areas. And I want to really figure out some, you know, strategies of how we move us forward and close those gaps. I want to ensure that all of our departments in our city implement community engagement strategies of how they're going to engage the residents of the city, including our residents on campus. I have seen the lack of engagement for the past 4 years and transparency on what is being done in the city, and it's really causing a lot of division. And people are just not informed about how decisions are being made. And I really want the voices of the residents to be involved. I will spend office hours out in community. That is where I thrive. Out in the community, every Friday, I will be out in the community, listening to residents and having office hours in different parts of the city, including campus. I want to be able to come here, sit down and have coffee and talk to everyone, talk to students about what their challenges are, what their experiences are, and really build a closer connection to UW. As deputy mayor, I found that it was so separate. And there are many times instances where I brought in UW professors, I brought in students to talk about specific issues, particularly around safety on campus and on State Street.
Thank you so much. When you're ready.
Okay, thanks. And one of the things I love about Madison is the degree to which we value community input and outreach, and the degree to which government, frankly, at all levels is influenced by that. And one of the things that we have done consistently, not just over the past 4 years, but I think for a long time in the city, is to really focus on community outreach and engagement in each project. Just give you a few examples. So for example, when we wrote the city's comprehensive plan, which was before I was in office, and the planning division did a tremendous amount of work to reach out into the community. They reached some 10,000 people and got their input on the land use planning process for our community. But not only did they just invite everybody in, they also specifically worked with community-based organizations to reach the voices that generally don't show up in local government, and to reach folks who, for whatever reason, are not the ones that show up at city council meetings, and to make sure that we're prioritizing those underrepresented voices in the comp plan process. Since then, we do that in most of our engagement processes. And so there's 2 things that I'd like to highlight that we've been working on. And so one is that process of really authentically and thoughtfully working with community-based organizations to reach underrepresented communities. And the other is to really meet people where they are. And so instead of expecting that let's just say we're doing a road project, And so instead of expecting that you're going to go out into the community and people are going to know everything about this road project and have strong opinions about it, and we stepped back and said, let's talk with people how they feel about our streets and our transportation system. And let's ask what their values are. And let's understand what people's priorities are, so that even before we get to the road project, we're incorporating the community's point of view in our process. And so that's something that we did start in my administration that I think has really been working well. So community outreach and engagement is embedded in every agency, but we also have specifically hired folks whose job is to reach out to, again, to folks that might be underrepresented in the city process. So we have folks whose job it is to reach out to people who speak Hmong, who speak Spanish, who speak Mandarin, and we are hiring people to reach out to folks about transportation, about planning. And it's important that we do this, because what we hear from the folks that don't on their own initiative show up in a city council meeting is very different from what we hear from the folks who just come and regularly testify. And it's really important for us to engage those perspectives and include them in the work that we do every day at the city.
Thank you.
Can I have a?
Then you have 30 seconds.
Okay. You know, as deputy mayor, I oversaw the equity, the racial equity team, and we started evaluating our communication and engagement through a racial equity lens. And so we would bring people to the table who would have unattended consequences for the decisions that we're making. And I want to reinvigorate that. I think we have missed many opportunities to engage with our most vulnerable populations. I want to require city council members to use this racial equity analysis process when making decisions on the council floor. And, you know, I think I am, okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
All right, and then we can move on to our next question. So housing that is affordable and adequately maintained is one of the primary concerns for both renters and homeowners in Madison. Describe what access to affordability of housing means to you and the ways you plan to address this issue in your own term as mayor. And we'll start with Satya on this one.
Thank you. So housing, I think, is really my top priority, and it has been for the past 4 years and would continue to be in the next 4 years, because as I think we are all experiencing, Madison is in a housing crisis. That's in large part because prior to me coming into office, we were underproducing housing. We just were not building enough housing to keep up with population growth. So we're about 4,000 units behind, and we need to be producing about 2,000 units of housing every year to keep up with population growth. In order to do that, we needed to change some of the rules and make it easier to produce housing in our community. And that's work that my administration has prioritized. In terms of affordable housing, to speak directly to your question, just broadly, housing is affordable to you when you don't have to spend more than 30% of your income on it. And so we need to be creating housing that is affordable to people at all levels of income and wealth in our community. And I believe we need to be creating that housing choice everywhere across our community. So it's important, I spoke in the opening to the importance of affordable housing for students, but it's also important that we're creating affordable options for people all across the community. And it's important that we create options for people who are interested in moving into home ownership, because right now it's very difficult for a first-time home buyer to find anything that they can afford. And we need to be producing a whole variety of different options. It may be single family homes, but it's more likely that it will be attached housing like townhouses or condominiums that will be affordable for first-time home buyers. And so we have worked over the past 4 years. We've more than doubled the Affordable Housing Fund. We've produced thousands of housing units, and we've changed the zoning. We've made it easier to build things by right. And we've made it easier to have housing cooperatives. We've made it easier to have backyard cottages, because it's so important that we be creating housing choice all throughout our community so that everybody can afford to live here, whether you're a barista or a teacher or a firefighter or a university professor. I don't think the professors have a hard time affording housing here, but you know, we really need to be creating that whole range. And that's something that I have prioritized, will continue to prioritize.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, there are two types of leaders during a crisis, right? I mean, I think, you can either let the crisis manage you or you manage the crisis and lead the crisis. And that's the big difference here. We really have to manage this crisis, and we have to work with developers. We have to work with realtors, and we have to work with neighborhood associations and residents to really bring them to the table to identify areas in the city where we can build. Will have a significant impact. The housing fund started when I was in the mayor's office, and doubling the housing fund is just not enough. I mean, we actually have to implement it and spend it and start building. And we have to do that with a sense of urgency. And that's just not happening. My approach is really this targeted universalism approach. It is based on equity, where we are looking at different areas and different populations in the city and really building based on the needs of that population. 55 and older, our senior community, our students, student housing on campus, and dividing and bringing together strategies, targeted strategies that will get us there to affordable housing. I think it's just not enough. We have to do more. It feels like we are in this affordable housing crisis, and we're not moving fast enough. And I'm going to look at our current systems that are interfering with the process of developers and getting the work done quickly. A few years ago, when Satya was on the council, there was a policy on inclusionary zoning, which really caused barriers to developers to build. And that caused the backlog. And that's why we're here today. And so we can't focus on these policies that are interfering with building housing. We have to match the supply and demand, but we have to use all of our tools in our toolbox to make sure that it's affordable, alongside a strong economic development plan where people are getting jobs that pay more than living wage to afford housing in the city.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You have 30 seconds.
So you have your timing a little bit wrong. I wasn't on the council when IZ was happening. But a couple more things to add. And that one is that we have spent millions of dollars subsidizing affordable housing over the past 4 years. In fact, we have spent more and created more housing units in the past year than were created in the entire 4 years before that. And we also have diversified the types of housing that we're building, and not just tax credit projects, but also co-ops and land trusts, and we're buying land.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will move to our third question then. So many people who live, work, attend school, and otherwise visit the downtown and campus area rely on public transportation. There are various upcoming programs that will change the shape of Madison's public transportation, such as BRT, bus rapid transit, the Madison Metro redesign, and the new permanent intercity bus terminal, and the potential of an Amtrak train station. Please, can you explain what transportation looks like to you in Madison for the next 4 years, and what it can continue to be, and what ways it can continue to be improved upon? And we'll start with you first, Gloria.
Yes. I agree with having diverse options of transportation in the city. I think that's so important. That's, pedestrian, that's bicycle, and the Amtrak, all those diverse transportation options is so important. And I just really want to just focus on ensuring that the people who really need the transportation in the city are being served. And I think what's lacking now with the network redesign is that, we didn't really base our decisions on equity. And so it's really impacting our most vulnerable populations across the city, far north, the far west, people with disability, our senior community, our communities of color that rely on transportation are having to walk further to get to their bus stop. And so we really, if we're going to talk about equity, and we're going to really, if we value, progressive progressive values in the city, we have to do the work. And so we built a network redesign that's causing us significant issues in our city. And so, we have to really, as mayor, I'm going to evaluate that network redesign. And I also want to evaluate transit system downtown to ensure that, the 80 bus is accessible to everybody. And that, it's not just going one way, but it's going the other way. And, you guys are able to get to where you need to be. I think the bus rapid transit system on State Street was a bad idea. I wish we would have been able to take the bus off State Street. It's just unsafe. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm walking down the street and crossing the street and, almost hit by a bus. I think it was a prime opportunity for us to reevaluate that and see how we can move that away. I think Hawthorne Court, I'm concerned about having a bus going down there. It's so narrow. And it's not safe for pedestrian traffic. And so we just need to be we need to streamline, and we need to focus and have more of an equity component in making these decisions.
Thank you. When you're ready.
So my administration has been focused on creating transportation choices for everyone, and regardless of what mode you use, you should be able to get around our city efficiently, safely, we have focused on, so we're a platinum biking city, we're improving our biking system, we're a gold walking city, and we've shifted how we fund sidewalks so that hopefully there'll be less opposition to building more sidewalks. And after 30 years of talking about rapid transit in the city of Madison, my administration broke ground on a bus rapid transit system this January, which is almost entirely funded by the federal government and will operate within the same budget that our metro transit system operates within now. We also undertook a network redesign of our transit system because the status quo is inequitable. And we have to make sure that we're not having inequitable consequences, particularly for low-income folks and people of color, who right now are more likely to have to transfer at a transfer point and are more likely to have a long commute. The network redesign addresses those issues. It makes it better for everyone, but it makes it even more better, if that's a way to say it, for low-income folks and for neighborhoods of color. I'm also very excited about the prospect of bringing Amtrak to our community. And when Amtrak put Madison literally on their Connect US map, I may have squeed. And we have been talking with them. We've been talking with the Federal Railroad Administration. We've been talking about with WSDOT and to put together what we need to put together to get Amtrak here, which would just be a huge boon for our economy, our tourism, and also mean that we can get to other big cities much more efficiently. One of the things that we haven't been talking a lot about, but I am actually really proud of the work that staff have done on this, is our Complete Green Streets program, where we've redesigned the rules of how we design streets to be clearer about what modes we're prioritizing where, and to include more green infrastructure, more space for trees, and to make sure that we're balancing all of these uses in a limited right of way. So I'm really excited about what this will do for our streets going forward and how it will help us to prioritize sustainability and transportation choices. I also want to mention an initiative that I started, which is to give free bus passes to middle school and high school students over the summertime. Many of our middle school and high school students get bus passes during the semesters, but then don't have them in the summertime. And we changed that so they could access the bus system to get to wherever they might need to go, whether it's a summer job or tutoring or sports or whatever it might be, because we want to support folks in getting around our community, again, as efficiently as possible and in the mode that they want to use.
Thank you. And you go 30 seconds, Gloria.
Sure. There's something I forgot to mention was the with the bus rapid transit system, we're moving the bus stops in the medians, and it really is unsafe, right? So people now have to walk across the intersection to hop on a bus. I mean, that's really unsafe, and it's not. it's not a thoughtful process. I mean, like East Washington Avenue. And we've done a lot of work around.
Thank you.
All right, and so for our last topical question before we start the Q&A portion of tonight's forum, many citywide issues such as education, public safety, economic growth, and environmental sustainability also impact the lives of young renters and UW-Madison staff and students. What main issues do you believe need to be addressed during your term as mayor in the next 4 years? And what impact do you hope to leave? We'll start with Satya.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I worked on campus for 13 years up at COWS in the social science building. And one of the things that struck me in my time on campus is that, certainly there are issues that are specific to campus, but at the end of the day, most of us are dealing with the same things. And we're dealing with, can we afford housing? Can we get from our housing to where we need to be? And, is there transportation options for us? And do we have economic opportunity? Do we have opportunities to go out and enjoy ourselves? So I think that, there certainly are issues that are specific to campus, but I think broadly, the issues that we face as a community are shared. And that's why I prioritize the things that I prioritize. It's why I prioritize housing. It's why I prioritize climate. It's why I prioritize transportation in my first term. And it's why I will continue to work on issues around racial equity, public safety, transportation safety, and investing in equitable economic development in our community. I think that, Madison is an amazing and wonderful place for us to be, but we could be even better. And we know that the opportunities that are available to some of us are not available to all of us in Madison. And we have a lot of work to do to make sure that those opportunities are available to our entire community, and that our housing market is more equitable, that our transportation system is more equitable, and our economic development is more equitable. And one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, and maybe we'll get questions on this, is the work that we did during the pandemic to support small businesses, and particularly businesses owned by women and people of color, through our equitable economic development work in the city. And one of the programs that I just really love that was created by our Economic Development Division is the Commercial Ownership Assistance Program. And this is where we are funding businesses owned by women and people of color and LGBTQ folks and veterans, to be able to purchase their storefront or their office building or wherever their business is located, so that they have a path to more generational wealth, and that they have more stability for their business. That's just one example of the work that we're doing across the city. So I'm really excited about the prospects for Madison. I think that there's, having the passenger rail, a stronger transportation system, having the bus, like actually finally having a bus terminal again in Madison, instead of having the buses have to stop outside of the Union here. We've made a lot of progress over the past 4 years, but there's a lot more work to do, and I'm very eager to do it.
Thank you. When you're ready, Gloria.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're facing so many challenges right now. And particularly on campus, I would say public safety is really a concern for me. I want you all to be safe here. And I think, when your parents, when you move here, right, we want to have a really safe community. I think about what happened to MSU and school shootings across the country. Those are the things that really keep me up at night. And I want you to be safe. And as mayor, or just recently, I've been working in partnership with the UW Public Health, City of Madison Public Health, and Downtown Madison Inc. to really find strategies of how to keep students safe on State Street and across campus. And we've invested in some really great initiatives, and that's, we're in the process of developing the Navigator program, where we are welcoming students and observing what's going on State Street, and they're ambassadors of State Street, and really identifying innovative ways to ensure safety on campus. and be prepared, right? Ensuring that our Madison Police Department is working with UW Police in campus on training of what would happen if there was an active shooter here on campus. And housing is such an issue. I mean, I saw lines of students who were waiting for housing in this city at the beginning of the school year. It happens every year. And we have to focus and have targeted strategies and work with UW campus on building housing, not only affordable housing, but housing. Right now, we are building high rises that are not affordable for our students. They're not affordable for anybody. And so you could have like 8, 10 people, I don't know, living to be able to afford one of these, rental units. It really is disturbing. And so those are the two main issues that I really want to work with UW campus as mayor. In the environment, as we are continue to build more density in our city, we need to ensure that we are keeping, green space and parks in our city. And trees, I mean, we have tore down trees across the city, and ensuring that we have a plan to replant trees for the future. And so I want to, as mayor, train people. One of the things that I hear all the time is from the communities that it needs to be a community response around environment. People need to understand why it's important. And so that's where I will need your help to do that.
Thank you. Back to you, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so just a few words about the Downtown Safety Initiative, which is a federal grant that my administration brought to Madison. And one of the things that my opponent didn't mention, which I actually think is maybe most important, is the work that we're doing with the Rape Crisis Center to offer training to bartenders and to prevent sexual assault and harassment, and which I know is a large issue on campus, and particularly for women and folks who identify as femme. So I'm really glad that we can support that work downtown. And we're trying to be really good about respecting the time limits.
Thank you. I appreciate you both. Next, we'll be moving to our audience Q&A. So we will have we will submit a Google form link over Zoom for you all in Zoom to submit questions to. Other than that, if you all have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you so you can ask your question. And then after we've completed the audience Q&A, we'll move to closing remarks. So do we have any questions from the audience? I see one back here.
Hi, my name is Nina. I'm a cell molecular biology PhD student. And unfortunately, over 80% of the students in my program are rent earned. So housing is something that's really important to me. I recently heard that the Town Council passed a new zoning change that would allow more unrelated people to rent apartments or houses together, which would help us afford adequate housing. All right, can you talk a little bit about whether you're in support of that change and why or why not? Thank you.
Sure, I can talk about that. I think the zoning ordinance wasn't going to give us the housing that we need immediately. I think that I'm concerned about housing closer to campus and really impacting single family homes. I think that some of the council members did bring forth an amendment to exclude some of the housing that's on the periphery of the campus. And the reason why is that, I am the mayor for all residents of Madison. And, we have to learn from our experiences in the past, in that when developers came in and started building these, property owners started buying these properties and really impacting single family homes. And so families started to move out. And then, we had our public schools who were impacted because of lower enrollment in our schools. And so, you know, it was very challenging, and we had to close like 8 schools in the city. And so when we make these policy decisions in zoning, we have to think about what these unintended consequences are. And I felt that, you know, some of the areas closer to campus was going to have some unintended consequences in losing single family homes.
Thank you for your response. When you're ready.
Thanks for your question, and shout out to Women in Science. I not only supported the change in family definition, I co-sponsored it. And I did for a number of reasons. Firstly, because of what you said, which is it's very different. People are rent burdened, and one way to make it easier for folks to afford housing is to allow more people to live together. And it's also why I supported changing the zoning to make it easier to do housing cooperatives in the city. But the other reason that I supported it is because I grew up in a university town, and my family was on food stamps and WIC, and we couldn't afford a place to live without having housemates. And so my entire time from when I was like 5 years old until I went to college, we always had housemates to help afford the rent. And I want families like mine to be able to live in Madison. I want families like yours and your friends and people in your PhD program to be able to afford to live in Madison. And you know, building more housing it's like a 2, 3, 5 year cycle between when something is approved and when it actually gets built and rented out or bought. And so we have to do that work. And we do have to use every single tool in the housing toolbox, but we also have to address the problem right now. And I think that the work that we did on the changing the family definition speaks to that. I know there was a lot of concern and fear in the neighborhoods, and you know, everybody keeps bringing up the specter of what happened decades ago. And the situation decades ago was very different. UW had a huge jump in enrollment at the time, and while UW had a small jump in enrollment recently, it doesn't compare at all. And I don't think that we're going to see the sort of dramatic unintended consequences that people are afraid of. I do think that we will see more people living together. And I do think that we may see some transition of properties from owner occupied to rental. But at the same time, in other parts of our city, we're seeing the opposite transition. Particularly with so many of the larger student housing buildings going up downtown, we've seen students move closer to campus, leaving behind houses that are being transformed back into single family housing. So I think it's an ebb and flow in our community, and I think that's okay. But it's really important that we allow folks like you to be able to afford housing in our community.
Thank you. Blair, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I think that it is, we have to be intentional, right? I mean, I think we can't just throw these zoning ordinance out there and it's going to fix our problem. You know, we have to be intentional and think about and work with UW campus and UW officials on where we build in this city, where we build on campus. And what the zoning ordinance does really is not going to help unless you have, you know, a family that's going to move out tomorrow, and you know, it's just not, it's just not going to do what we need it to do to provide housing for you.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Now, next question. Let's go to Zoom really quick. Let's see if we have anyone over Zoom.
I didn't have everything that was over Zoomers coming in through the form is being added to the document. So I think it's just please hear any of these questions.
Awesome. So one of the questions from Zoom. So what have you done on equity to ensure solution? Yeah, so let me read that again. What? Is it too close?
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, you read it.
Yeah.
What have you done on equity to ensure solutions to the racial equity gaps in our city?
Yeah, great question. And thanks to the folks on Zoom for hanging in there and asking questions. So we're working on equity in a number of fronts, and both gender and racial equity, which, obviously both are important. But specifically, I assume the person is asking about racial equity opportunities and gaps. And so this is a really, it's a big issue. There's a lot of different gaps. We could talk about gaps and disparities in health. We could talk about disparities in housing. We could talk about disparities in transportation. And the city is in employment, and the city is working on all of those. And largely we're working on them in partnership with our community. So we've talked a little bit about the housing stuff already, and let me talk a little bit about health, because that's something we haven't addressed yet. So our public health department is working with a number of partners, including the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, on a project to close the gaps in maternal and child health. And there's really disturbing disparities. Black mothers and children face much worse health outcomes than white mothers and babies do. And so public health has been working hard with a range of partners to close those gaps, in part by having doulas and birth coaches and folks that are checking in with moms, with pregnant people and new moms and new parents, to support them in having better health outcomes. So that's really important work. In terms of economic development, I talked a little bit about some of the work that we're doing, but during the pandemic, we formed really strong partnerships with the Latino Chamber, with the Hmong Chamber, with the Black Chamber here in Madison, to support their memberships, to support entrepreneurs of color and being able to access information and funds to start up their businesses and to build wealth, and to help sort of close some of the opportunity gaps in economic development. One thing that we did, which I just love, it's not a huge thing, but I think it's really fun, is we became a Kiva city. I don't know if you guys know the Kiva platform. It's a micro lending platform that you, like, literally people anywhere in the world can lend to people who are starting businesses or looking to grow their business. And so the city of Madison will vouch for businesses here, and we will match what they are able to get lended through the Kiva platform. We will match that for them. And then the one or more of the chambers will support them in growing their business. And so I've lent to, I don't know, a dozen different Madison-based businesses on Kiva. Again, it's not a huge thing, but for a business that just needs a little bit of cash to start up, it can mean everything.
Thank you so much. You're ready.
So, I'm glad Satya brought up the public health, because that is really the health outcomes and the inequities on that is something that we started when I was in the mayor's office. We did a lot of great work, the 5 years as deputy mayor. I have focused my entire public service career on dismantling institutional racism within public service, within government. With policing, I started Amigos en Azul, Friends in Blue, engaging our community and building trust and relationships. I reviewed the police department through an equity lens, identified challenges and disparities in arrests, how we engage our communities of color, and promotions and recruitment. And we changed so many policies based on that assessment. As deputy mayor, as I mentioned, I oversaw the racial equity and social justice team within the city. And we made significant progress, including the public health and disparities. Recently, there was a Department of Civil Rights request. It was a budget amendment. And I bring up this experience just to highlight that we have to do more than just talk about equity in our city. But we actually have, when we have the opportunity to make this decision, we make the decisions internally that will impact equity, we have to do the right thing. And the Department of Civil Rights came through and asked for a budget amendment to hire an extra investigator, an equal opportunities investigator, to support an area of the city, the town of Madison. Significant proportion of people of color who are over 90% renters, to investigate civil rights complaints. And the finance team, the finance committee of alders, it was a 3-3 vote. The mayor, Satya, could have broke the tie and have it pass. So there are not many opportunities that we get as a leader to actually make a decision. And this was the Monday before Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday. And it broke my heart to see this because as a leader, we have to do whatever we can and everything that we do to ensure equity. And we have that opportunity, we need to take it and lead.
Thank you.
So I prefer doing actual work rather than being performative. That particular budget amendment wouldn't have passed the council. It needed 15 votes. And so it didn't pass the finance and it didn't pass at the council because it needed 15 votes. But if we're talking about investing in the Department of Civil Rights, I actually created an entire new division in the Department of Civil Rights that is focused on equity and social justice. And we hired a new coordinator. We're building up the staff there. We hired 3 community connectors that I spoke about earlier, and that are focusing on language communities and language access.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to our next question from the audience. Do you have any in the Google form?
Those are also being added.
See it over here.
And for this one, Gloria will start, I believe, right?
Hello, thank you both for coming. I think it says a lot about candidates when they can speak well about their competition as well. So I know you guys have been going at this campaign for a long time at each other, but I just wanted to ask, if you had one nice thing to say about each other, one thing you admire about the other candidate, you would speak on that for a second. I just think it says a lot about character.
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, I think, Satya is very smart and she's really, she understands policy. She understands policy. That's her entire career is policy. And so that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I think Laura's very committed to the city of Madison. I mean, she talks about it in her statement every time. We've had like, what, a dozen of these? So she talks about having lived here her whole life. I think she's really committed and cares about Madison. We definitely do not agree about what that should translate into, but I do not doubt her sincerity.
Thank you both. Any more questions?
And for this one, Satya, you'll start.
Hey everyone. So in the United States, up to 50% of the food that we produce is thrown away before it's ever able to be sold in grocery stores, before people are able to even access that food. And in addition to, there's a really big food insecurity issue. I know on UW-Madison's campus that there was a recent report that came out that said up to 40% of people face food insecurity sometime during their college experience. That's really, really heartbreaking for me because we are the agriculture sector of the world. We are growing much of the world's food, but it doesn't seem like that connection is drawn together. What are you going to do in the next 4 years to solve that issue?
Thank you. A topic that we haven't talked about yet. That's a great question. And you're right, it's a huge issue. So when I was on the council, I actually was one of the inaugural members of Madison's Food Policy Council. So I've worked on food policy for a long time. Here in Madison, I'd say a couple of things that we've done. And one is through the feed kitchens. I don't know if you're familiar with feed. They actually have a program to help to divert food that would otherwise be wasted to folks that need it. Which I think is a fantastic program. We also have programs at farmers markets where vendors can donate food that they haven't sold that day at the market that will go to food banks. So again, trying to, wherever there is, I don't like to use the word, but like extra food, that we can divert it to people who need it. During the pandemic, the county did a really amazing thing with federal funding, which is they actually started paying farmers who needed income to provide food to food banks. So farmers who might otherwise have had to just waste their crop because they didn't have the markets were able to send that food to food banks and then to get that out to needy people. So these are examples of the work being done. I think it's not enough. But one of the things that the Food Policy Council has been trying to do over time is to build out that ecosystem so that we can catch more and more of the wasted food and divert it to people who need it. I also think that, so you didn't mention it in your question, but one of the problems that's associated with food waste is what happens when that food breaks down and the greenhouse gas emissions that result from wasted food in our landfill. And so another thing that we've been working on is trying to divert food waste from the landfill. Obviously, first and best if it can feed people, but even if it, so we're trying to create a situation where we could actually compost it and then use it back as fertilizer rather than letting it rot and create methane in the landfill. So I think trying to really build as much of a zero waste ecosystem with respect to food and organics as we can is the focus. And this is work that the sustainability director in my office has been doing. We actually have a grant from NRDC to reduce food waste. And so we're continuing to work with national partners and local partners to do a better job at reducing food waste. Again, both to divert, but then also at least to compost if we can't do anything else.
Thank you. You ready?
When I was in the mayor's office for 5 years, we had a food policy coordinator, and that position was eliminated or it was sent somewhere else. That food policy coordinator was very, very important in establishing all the things that Saki talked about, and really helped us across the city. One of the things that we worked on was ensuring that we had access to food in areas of food deserts in our city. And it still continues as our city continues to grow. We have to think about food access across the city. And we don't do that enough. I mean, we have to, in planning our neighborhoods in our cities, within our city, we have to think about grocery stores, food access, and these food deserts that currently exist. We haven't really been able to move the needle in those areas. And so it is a challenge. I think that we've done a really good job. Feed Kitchen opened up when I was in the mayor's office, and they're doing amazing work and working with our vendors, our food carts across the city, who are doing a great job at providing food access and moving them across the city and throughout our neighborhoods as well.
Awesome. Thank you. You have 30 seconds.
Food policy coordinator still works for the city. His name is George. He's over in economic development where he wants to be. And he's doing great work. I think that we have been investing in reducing food deserts or food swamps, I think is the newer terminology. And in particular, I'm proud of the fact that we've secured a grocery store for South Park Street. So we're going to prevent there being a grocery gap on the south side of Madison. That is taken a lot of work, but it's something that I've been committed to and that we've achieved.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you all. We'll move to our next question on Zoom.
Yeah, there's one. What do you see as the pros and cons of making all of State Street a pedestrian mall?
And for this one, Gloria will start.
I think trying to think of cons first. I can't think of cons. I think I see a lot of pros to that. It's an opportunity to really build downtown Madison as the destination place and safe for pedestrians and the opportunity for economic growth in our city that we really need right now. And so I think that there's so many times during the year where we have to have buses go on the exterior part and move because there's so many events that happen in downtown Madison. And so I've always thought that during the time when I was in the mayor's office of why we continue to use State Street. And so I think it is time to reevaluate that. I don't see any cons with taking the bus rapid transit system off State Street.
Thank you. You ready?
Yeah, so I think when you look at pedestrianized malls across the country, and there are at least a handful of them, and you see a lot of pros and cons. And there's some that have been very successful. There are some that have been total flops and have actually hurt businesses. So I think it's important to learn from experience in other places and try and understand what are the factors that makes a successful pedestrian mall. In Madison in particular, we are blessed and cursed with the geography of the isthmus. And so we don't have a street grid like other communities do. And there aren't obvious ways to route transit through downtown without using State Street. And so when we were putting together the bus rapid transit routing, we looked at probably 12 different alternatives of how to route it just downtown. And we wanted to balance, frankly, getting people to where they wanted to be, which is broadly State Street, and bringing that, the economic activity that transit can bring, and particularly bus rapid transit can bring, and making sure that our existing businesses benefit from that, which suggests, again, putting transit on State Street, with the longstanding desire of some people in the community to not have transit on State Street. And so we struck a balance. We will have transit on the upper half of State Street and not on the lower half of State Street. We're in conversations now with a whole range of stakeholders inside city government and outside city government about whether it makes sense to pedestrianize the lower half of State Street. There are some pros. It'd be really nice for our food service businesses to be able to have larger sidewalk cafes, for example. There are some cons for businesses. For example, folks that are retail businesses really want you walking right by their window so that you see that thing and you walk in and buy it. And if you push people out into the middle of the street, you're not doing that same experience of window shopping. So we could actually hurt some businesses by pedestrianizing. The other thing, though, which is I think at the end of the day, the most important, is public safety. The truth is that the buildings on State Street, the older buildings on State Street, are wood framed. They do not have sprinklers. They are very vulnerable to fire. And the right of way that exists right now on State Street is critical for our fire department if there were to be a fire on State Street. So we cannot give up that public safety priority. We have to be able to get fire trucks down State Street. Now, can we create a pedestrian situation and still have that? Likely, but we have to be careful what we do and avoid unintended consequences.
Thank you. You have 30 seconds, Gloria.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of all cities that can make it happen, it's Madison, right? I mean, Madison, we can make it happen from my perspective. But, I don't lead based on my own agenda. Really, I lead for what is the best interest of our city and the voices of the residents of the city. And, that's what as mayor, I'm going to go out to the residents of the city. I'm going to talk to students on campus to get their perspective, because this can't be my agenda. It has to be the residents of the city.
Thank you. Next question. Yeah, two. All right. What's our time? Okay. We're making time.
Hi, I'm Ian, and speaking about State Street, I've had a lot of concerns about small businesses being pushed out of State Street and larger franchise companies coming in. Recently, Auntie Anne's and Jamba Juice coming in. Will that trend continue? Will State Street become a major business hub, or will it stay as a small business street that it has been for a very long time, ever since I've lived here?
In-
I think it's me
Yeah,
first.
Satu, you'll begin
Yeah.
with this one.
Thanks
you.
for the question. That's something that I've been very worried about as well. And we've actually done some work to look at the dynamics of what causes a space to be more attractive to chains, for example. And it has a lot to do with floor plate size. And so like literally the layout of the storefront and how big it is. And so one of the ways that we can help to influence the business mix on State Street is if we have redevelopments, limiting the size of the storefronts. But we also have to balance it because we don't want a bunch of vacancies. And so one of the things that we've been doing in the wake of the pandemic, which obviously was very difficult for small businesses and local businesses, in addition to supporting the businesses directly, we've been working with landowners or the landlords to try and get more pop-up businesses in. So you may have seen the culture collectives on the 400 block of State Street. Those are small businesses, entrepreneurs of color, women entrepreneurs that have never had a brick and mortar storefront before. And we cut a deal with the landlord to give them the opportunity to move into those vacant storefronts and try out having a brick and mortar business. And we are now working on how to expand that business, that kind of program, not just for shared storefronts, but also potentially for placing businesses, at least temporarily, into other vacant storefronts. And one of the tools that we use to do that is we've created a TIF district for downtown Madison so that we can do more economic development work. So I think there is a lot of work to do to make sure that we retain a healthy business mix. And one of the things that other communities do for malls like State Street, either pedestrian or semi-pedestrian, is they actually have a staff person whose job it is to sort of manage the business mix and to manage activities. In Madison, we don't have that, but we work very closely with the Business Improvement District and Downtown Madison Incorporated. So I think that there's, and based on conversations I've had, I think there's a lot of opportunity to work in partnership to have somebody who is better able to manage that business mix and to recruit new businesses in. And for us to be able to provide resources to support them, at least initially coming in to some of the vacancies we have. The other thing I just point out is that some of the landlords are actually getting pretty significant tax benefits from holding storefronts vacant. And so that's been really frustrating. And we need to figure out if there's anything the city can do to help them sort of move along and actually rent their spaces so that we can have a more vibrant business mix.
Thank you. When you're ready, Gloria.
So the pandemic had a significant impact on our businesses downtown. I've been walking on State Street and meeting with business owners. And they're just really concerned about the future. They're barely surviving. And we need them to thrive. And that's why part of my economic development plan is to reinvigorate State Street and look at these empty storefronts, work with those landlords, bring them to the table so that they can be part of the vision of the future of State Street. During the pandemic, we did not invest in those businesses on State Street. And so, and these are, minority owned businesses. And I was so disheartened that, during that time when we were providing COVID funds through the pandemic, that that city council members did not see value in supporting our small businesses on State Street and talked about how they wanted to invest in minority owned businesses, and on the south side, for example, when in fact, a lot of these businesses are minority small businesses. And so I do want to strengthen and work with Downtown Madison in the Business Improvement District and landlords, and really develop a plan to reinvigorate State Street. Right now, there's nothing happening. They're on their own. And we really have to step in with strong leadership to bring the partners together to reinvigorate, because that's just not what's happening right now.
Thank you. you. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in small businesses, probably over $1 million in small businesses in the city of Madison, and have many of those on State Street.
Thank you. And then we will move to our final question before we get to closing remarks.
Hi, my name is Nicholas, and I was wondering if you guys could talk about some of your endorsements, whether you're proud about them and how they ultimately reflect your platform. Thank you.
Gloria, you will start with this one.
Sure. I have been endorsed by the Wisconsin State Journal. I'm also just recently endorsed by the Madison Professional Police Union. I am very special to me because I am a longtime union member. I've been endorsed by former Mayor Soglin, who served our city for many years as mayor. And I am endorsed by many community leaders, very diverse community leaders who have been in the city, who really care about the city just as much as I do. And I think those are the endorsements that I value the most, because these are real residents who care about our city, and they're concerned about their future, its future, just as I am. And so those community leaders are really important for me.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Thanks for the question. I'm proud to be endorsed by Congressman Mark Pocan, and I was actually very happy earlier today. We had a press conference with the Congressman and Senator Baldwin announcing $4 million for a new homeless shelter for women and families. And we didn't even talk about homelessness. There's lots to talk about there. And I'm also been endorsed by County Executive Parisi. I'm particularly proud of that endorsement because historically here in the city of Madison, there has not been a positive relationship between the mayor and the county executive, going back for at least a decade. And the county executive and I broke that tradition, and we have a very strong, positive working relationship. And so I'm proud to have his endorsement. I've also been endorsed by a number of labor unions, including my labor union, AFT Local 223, United Faculty and Academic Staff, and then the Wisconsin AFT, South Central Federation of Labor, the Building Trades Council, IBEW, anyway, I could go on, but labor. And I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood and Emily's List, by Victory Fund and LPAC. I've been endorsed by the Wisconsin Conservation Voters, which again, I'm very proud of because my training is as a biologist and an ecologist, and I care very much about the environment, particularly about climate change. So to have the confidence of the conservation voters means a lot to me. I've also been endorsed by 314 Action, which is an organization nationally that endorses scientists in public office. The Progressive Change Committee, endorsed by, I think, 11 members of the county board and the county board chair, Patrick Miles. And I think we're up to 12 members of the city council, maybe a few more than that. And that also is really important to me because those are the folks that I work with on a regular basis to lead our city. And so to have the confidence of the majority of the city council means a lot to me. And I've been endorsed by a number of folks in our community as well, community leaders from all across the city. And I'm honored by their confidence in me. I think our community has seen the kind of leader I am over the past 4 years, and folks are stepping up to support my leadership and ask for another 4 years. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. And you have 30 seconds, Gloria, if you'd like.
So I have also been supported by former Madison School Board members and current and former city council members. And so I'm grateful for their support. I have worked with them in the past, and they are also very concerned about the current leadership and the future of our city. And so I'm grateful for their support as well.
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions. We always value all the great questions you had. You guys threw some curveballs today, so it was really great. So now we'll move to closing remarks. So we'll start with Satya. You'll have 3 minutes And Gloria, you'll have 3 minutes as well. And then after that, you'll hear from us at the table. So when you're ready.
All right, thank you. I don't know if I need 3 minutes, but I just want to say thank you. And thanks all of you for coming, for sitting here and listening to us for this whole time. Thanks for the folks on Zoom and for zooming in and listening. And thanks for the great questions. I really appreciate it. And it was nice to get to talk about a few things that we haven't talked about in forums before. So thanks for that. And thanks for caring about our city and informing yourself about your vote. Please do vote. Again, I do hope you vote for me on or before April 4th, but please, whichever of us you vote for, go out there, vote for Janet for Justice. It's a critical race at the state Supreme Court race is so important for our state and our community. I've said this before tonight, I'll say it again. I'm focused on the issues that I believe are critical for Madison and that our community wants the city government to be focused on: housing, climate, racial equity, public safety, including transportation safety, equitable economic development, and making sure that we're investing in our young people. And these are the issues that we're working on right now in the mayor's office and throughout the city of Madison. These are the issues that we will continue to work on. And one of the things that I'm proud of over the past 4 years is that we had a global pandemic and I stepped up to lead our community through it. And I think if you can do that, you can do just about anything. So I'm ready to keep going for another 4 years and working for Madison. And I ask for your support. If you'd like to learn more about me or the campaign, please visit satyaformadison.com. And again, whatever you do, don't forget to vote on or before April 4th. Thank you for all being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you to all who are on Zoom, who are spending time with us this evening. It's great great questions today. As I mentioned, I'm running because I care about Madison and I'm concerned about its future. And we need a strong leader. I've spent my entire career serving in public service. I as well led us through the pandemic through the Madison School Board as president. And so please go out and vote. Vote for me, Gloria Reyes, for mayor. More information, reyesformayor.com. And I'm so committed to the voices of our young people and our students on campus that I hired 3 UW Madison students who are right here. Dante and Chandra, thank you for being here and for sticking through this with me. And they have been so valuable in really informing me about the issues that are impacting our campus students. And so thank you again for being here and for the great questions.
Thank you all so much. So now let's get some stuff from us.
Yeah, sure. I'll just do a quick spiel on behalf of Badgers Vote. The elections early voting is starting tomorrow and it will be on campus. It'll be from the 21st to the 31st. Election day is April 4th. Please vote. Vote for mayor, vote for alderperson, school district, Supreme Court, all the elections. Please vote. We have tote bags and beanies and all the guides for the different candidates that are running and stuff, all at that table back there. So please grab stuff. Grab the swag. You don't have to do anything to grab the swag, just grab it. It's all for you. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate all of you. Have a good evening.
Awesome. Thank you.